Hello Year 5 and welcome to Wednesday's topic lesson with me, Miss Medlicott. In today's lesson we're going to be doing some music around our topic theme of Into the Rainforest. So we will be linking it to ideas from the Explorer as well as the work that we've been doing so far this term around the rainforest. Our learning objectives for today are to identify different sounds in the rainforest. We're going to be using musical terms such as rhythm, pulse, volume and texture to describe and compose a piece of music. Your piece of music is going to be a piece of rainforest music and you are going to create your own graphic score for a piece. To start things off, before we get onto the composing stage, we've got to do some listening and appraising. So that means that you're going to listen to a piece of music, or I say piece of music, they're actually the sounds of the rainforest. And I want you to listen to it carefully and try to pick out which sounds you can hear. What do you think is making those sounds? Now I want you to make a list of all that you think you can hear and all of the possible animals or the sources of those sounds. Where do you think they're coming from? So please follow the link and listen to the clip. Okay, so perhaps you heard some water, maybe you heard some a variety of different bird calls. Think about those sounds. Were they quite loud? Were they quite quiet? Did you hear any insects? What sorts of insects could you hear? Did you hear any did you hear anything like monkeys or any kind of predators that you heard in the background there? Did you hear the branches of the trees move? Be interesting to know what you got from that piece of the sound of the sounds of the rainforest. Okay, so the musical vocabulary that we've got to understand and we're going to be using today. We have texture, and texture is the mix and the layer of the sounds, which creates a kind of a texture and it makes it more interesting to listen to. So we're going to be using that within our piece of music. We also have some rhythm. Now rhythm is the pattern of long and short sounds as you move through a song or move through the piece. So are you going, is it a slow beat? Or is it a faster beat? The volume of a sound is how loud or quiet the sound is. So are you going to go very, very loud or is it going very quiet? Or are you going to move between the two? You know, it's that sense of moving or changing your volume. And then the pulse. If you remember from music from term 2, when we were talking about finding the pulse, it's finding the beat. Okay, it's like a ticking clock or your heartbeat. Okay, so actually what you can do to feel the pulse, you take your 2 fingers here and you just place it on your neck and you should be able to feel your pulse. Yeah, I've got mine. And it's a steady beat, it's a constant. We can count it by the number of beats per minute. So of course if you've just been doing some exercise, you've been jumping up and down or running around, your beat will be pulsing faster. It's a steady beat will be a bit quicker. But as I've been sat down, mine should be steadier. That's it. So that's the pulse. And the pulse of music is that steady beat. Now, for today's lesson, you're going to be creating your own graphic score. And you can think of it a little bit like what we call a musical sandwich. Okay, a musical sandwich, all right? It's not something we can eat, but it's a way of thinking about putting layer upon layer of different things, like a sandwich filling, okay, to create your piece of music. Okay, another way of thinking about it are musical pizzas. So thinking in terms of, if it's a musical pizza, you're thinking of the different toppings that you're putting on, and it builds together to make your overall piece of music. Now, the way in which you're going to do this composition is thinking about the layers within the rainforest. And that is something that we have covered quite a lot so far in our topic lessons, both in science and also in geography. So hopefully the layers of the rainforest is quite a familiar topic to you. So the 3 layers that we are going to focus on for this composition, the forest floor, the understory layer, and then the canopy layer. If you're wanting a challenge, you can add the emergent layer. Okay, so that's sort of like your red chili challenge. But for the rest of you, for most of us, we're all going to do the forest floor, the understory layer, and the canopy layer. So you've got your 3 fillings, the 3 parts to your sandwich. Okay, and you're going to compose music for each layer. Okay, so first things first, we're going to create our graphic score. Okay, your graphic score. Now, all that is going to be for you is you can draw a picture. And you can copy this picture, in fact, where we've just got some trees at the moment. Okay, but you're going to draw your rainforest. Okay, and you're going to make it nice and clear that this is going to be the forest floor. Here's your understory. Here's your canopy layer. Okay, and then you're going to do 3 lines across it, like you see on the screen. Okay, they've got to be evenly spaced, but you're separating your own picture into 3 parts, which is the forest floor at the bottom, then the understory layer, and then the canopy layer. Okay, so draw your graphic score on a nice clear bit of paper, label it very clearly, and your 3 lines. Pause the video now to do that. Okay, now that you've had a chance to draw your overall score, like I did on the previous slide, we're now going to focus on the canopy layer. Okay, the canopy layer. Now I want you to think about which animals or which wildlife live at the canopy layer. Pause the video to write down some ideas. Right, so as you'll remember, at this particular layer, we've got some birds. We might have some predators. We might even have some snakes. We might have animals that move between the emergent layer and the understory. But the canopy layer, I'm going to pick in particular, I think the birds will be quite clear. So, once you've chosen a sound that you really want to put into your musical score, what we're going to have to do is find an instrument in your house that you think will make that particular sound. Now, I know that for many of you, you're not going to have musical instruments lying around your house. So this is where we need to be a little bit creative. Now, for my bird sound, I have chosen to use, and I'm just going to experiment, and you're going to do the same. I've got a fork and I've got a glass. Okay. Now I'm just going to experiment with different sounds to see which one is going to make the sort of sound that I think would be appropriate. So I'm just going to try. That might work. If I swing it round, what sort of sound would that make? Perhaps that's not quite right for a bird. It's not quite right for a bird. However, it might be okay for if there's rainfall. It's a sort of quite a nice sound in a way. And if I try by doing something inside the glass. Do we hear that has its own kind of rhythm? I slow it down. That could be quite interesting. You don't have to do that. It's about a case of you experimenting with different sounds, trying to think, what do you want to kind of get across here? It might be also that, as well as physical instruments or makeshift instruments, you can use your voice as well. So if I was trying to get across this bird sound, because that didn't quite work with the glass, that made a different sound. But if I wanted to try and make a bird sound, I could sort of think about how I could use my voice to do that. So possibly, right? This is a chance for you, Year 5, to be quite creative and looking at what you have in your house that you are allowed to use to create some different sounds, okay? When you found some sounds that you think, actually that would work quite nicely, I want you to make a note of what the instrument is and how you've used it. Okay, and then for the understory layer. The understory layer, I'm just trying to think really of what I could use here to get us across. I mean, it's quite dark at this stage in this particular place. Perhaps there's a lot of movement. Maybe there's the pitter-patter of rain falling. Maybe that pitter-patter is becoming harder. So all I have here, I've got a saucepan, and I wanted to have some, it might be that you have some dry pasta at home, or some rice. I don't, I've only got these little milk cartons. This is what I'm using. And I'm just going to experiment. Again, a lot of today's lesson is about experimenting with different sounds and what will make an appropriate sound. Now I'm going to try and just swirl them around. That could be like torrential rain, couldn't it? Or if that gives a different kind of rhythm. If I throw them up and down, that gives a different rhythm altogether. So I want you to try and experiment there. The understory, what else could you show? Maybe you want to get across the slithering of a snake. How might you get that across? In fact, if I go like that, maybe there's a sort of sound of a snake slithering along. Chance for you to be creative. So pause the video, have a go for the understory layer. Okay, and then the forest floor. Along the forest floor, we might hear footsteps. We might have the creaking of branches underfoot. We might have the padding of paws of jaguars and panthers as they move through. So I found some cereal, a cereal box, that it might be something that would be quite useful for getting across some footfall. And I've got just a sieve. That gives quite an effective sound for footfall. If I shake the cereal box, that could be something like more rainfall. I'm turning it from side to side again. That might be something that's quite effective, particularly if you're trying to get across the sound of the rain. You might find actually that for footfalls or for the movement along the forest floor, hitting a cushion might be more effective. Try and be quite creative with your beats, with your rhythm. But remember, at all times, Year 5, you are in control. We're not being, it's not a chance to be silly. It's a chance to be very controlled with your movements and to make sure that you are doing all of the beats very deliberately, okay? So have a go now at finding some instruments that you think might be appropriate for the forest floor and the sounds of the forest floor that you want to get across. Okay, now that you've had a chance to experiment with some different instruments, including your voice, what I want you to do on your big picture is to label and draw which instruments you will use for each layer, okay? So you're going to label and draw which instruments you want to use for each layer. Now remember, with the graphic score, this is like your set of instructions as to how to play your piece. So it's got to be clear to you, okay? It's got to be clear to you. You've got to be able to understand what you've written for each part, okay? So make sure that it's nice and clear. What instruments do you want to use for each layer? That's all you're going to do for today. Okay, and we will carry on with this next lesson. So I'll see you all again with your drawn and labelled graphic scores for tomorrow's session. Bye.